quite scary how many people in the modern day are willing to be told something and just to accept what they're told at face value without any kind of research or concern at all that what they're hearing is true. It's you look at certain of the data that's being passed around and you get to understand what I'm saying. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about is what I'm going to cover today on the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. By the way, I'm your host. I'm Kurt. Today is Wednesday, the 4th of August of 2021. Welcome to everyone who's here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, wherever else you happen to be joining me from. And the subject that I want to talk about is, I've titled the piece, Unsubstantiated. I'm going to go ahead and read my notes real quick. Are you evil? Whether or not you are, I can certainly level an accusation to that effect against you. If I do so, and you're not evil, would you want others assuming the charge made was valid without any proof? I know I wouldn't. I have enough problems so as not to need help where culpability is concerned. Does it matter if the person or people leveling the indictment are credible? Maybe inasmuch as it's more reasonable to take their statements seriously. Should you automatically believe them because they seem to be stand-up people? I would certainly not say so. It's been an ongoing problem for some time that the moment someone, often an individual who's not trustworthy, swears out a statement against another, depending on who that other is, he or she is immediately considered to be guilty by a substantial group of others. I don't care who is being accused. An indictment is not sufficient to pass judgment. Wrong must be proven before I'm willing to act. And that's the end of my notes. Look, there are obviously any number of considerations, but I have literally had family members who have been accused of activities by other family members who have zero proof to the effect of what they're saying. And I'm not willing to count those accusations out just because I'm not really inclined on the face of it to believe them. On the other hand, I'm not willing to count the other person, the person who's being accused, guilty either. The point here is, if I ever find out that he or she, I'm not going to get into specifics, is guilty of some particular action, if I can prove it, then I'm going to know at that point that that's the case. I'm not going to ignore the statements of people who are speaking against that individual, regardless whether he or she is a reputable individual in my viewpoint or not. It's beside the point. That reputable people do things wrong too. So I can't decide that that person is definitely innocent of wrongdoing because that individual is a stand-up individual. On the same token, if you level charges against another individual, I cannot assume that the charges that you're leveling against that individual are true and correct, and that I should find that individual wanting or guilty of something, even if you are an extremely credible, extremely laudable individual. It's not, in my mind, a particularly complex thing. But, and like I say, this is a bigger problem, right? We literally have people today who, if certain people give them information, they are willing to accept that information, not sight unseen. They see the information that the people are passing on, but whether or not they've done any due diligence to determine whether or not, whether there's any truth to what's being said. They're just willing to accept the information regardless whether there's any reason for them to do so. And I'm just here to tell you this is not appropriate. And it's even less appropriate when somebody's reputation, when their character is being besmirched. And that's regardless whether you think that person is a wonderful person or a horrible person. Assuming that a person is guilty. Look, one of the things about the American legal system is it was supposed to be true that the fact that somebody had been previously convicted of some crime could not be held against them in court. And the reason for that is because the person may have done wrong, learned their lesson, moved on, and then had somebody accuse them. And if you use the fact that they had done wrong before and and coupled that with the accusation with no proof, the people might be inclined to believe that the person had done something wrong, right? Because they'd done something before, so why not assume that? Personally, you can make that assumption if you want. For my part, I'm going to be very careful not to accuse people of any wrongdoing unless I'm sure they are, and I'm not going to accept that somebody is guilty of wrongdoing until such time as they've had their, quote, day in court. I'm just not going to do it. And my suggestion to you is to do likewise. If somebody presents you with information that seems like it's horribly damaging to the reputation of another person, consider that the person presenting you with the information may be as culpable of wrongdoing as the person against whom they're presenting that information, if nothing else, in telling tales, in tale-bearing, right? The fact is that you cannot assume or believe that a person is guilty of wrongdoing because even the most credible witness stands up against that person. You cannot. It's not something you can do. And if you do, you are allowing yourself to be sucked in to a perspective, to a viewpoint that you really shouldn't accept. OJ, was he guilty or was he innocent? You know what? To this day, I have no idea of whether or not he did what he was accused of. To this day, I have no idea. Now, the court said he was innocent in one sense, and in a civil sense, they said he was liable for certain things, which the burden of proof was much lower on. Does that mean he was guilty of murder or whatever? I have no idea, to be quite frank with you, and I don't know of anybody who can honestly say. I know this, he didn't go to jail for such guilt. And I see the fact that he went to jail later on for far lesser things to have been somewhat unfortunate, even if the things were true. Now, he may have just gotten the sort of result that he could have expected from that, and in that case, I guess that's just how that is. But my point is to say, I don't know what he was guilty of. And until you can tell me in a court of law, Mr. Simpson was guilty of this or that, I'm not going to believe that that's true. And he was found innocent whether you like it or not. Now, to be fair, the standard of the burden of proof was very high. It was beyond a reasonable doubt, right? But to be fair on that, that's also what's expected in that kind of case. So I'm sorry to tell you this, but if they couldn't have proven it beyond a reasonable doubt, they probably shouldn't have leveled the accusation, regardless whether it looks like it's true or not, right? And I know there are a lot of people who are going to be looking at me and thinking, do you really believe OJ was innocent? I'm going to tell you again, it's not a question of whether or not I believe OJ was innocent. It's a question of whether or not I can show, or the courts could show, that Mr. Simpson was guilty. Because this is the standard in the United States. Innocent until proven what? Innocent until proven guilty. And that applies to every other person. So the person in my family who accused another person in my family of wrongdoing, I'm not saying that other person did or didn't do something wrong. I'm not saying you are or are not making reasonable statements with regard to that. Rather, what I'm saying is, I don't know, and I'm not willing to assess guilt without proof of it. So, and this is not, that again, that's not to try and talk you down, that's not to try and make you feel bad, right? This is the standard. This is what must be the standard in my viewpoint. We must presume innocence until guilt can be proven. We cannot start from a position of guilty until proven innocent. We just can't. That doesn't mean that I won't necessarily take care around a person if it looks like they might have done wrong, but it does mean that I'm not going to assume their guilt until it can be shown to be true. I'm not doing it. All right, I'm about at the end of my time, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. This is the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I'm Kurt. Today is Wednesday, the 4th of August of 2021. That means tomorrow will be Thursday, the 5th of August of 2021. Thank you for everyone who has been here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube. Remember, Rumble is my preferred platform. I periodically accidentally say YouTube. I do mean Rumble. You can give me a positive Rumble or a negative one on Rumble, whichever you prefer or choose to do. You, of course, don't have to give me one at all, but I would love that you do, so that I would know whether or not the content is something worth your while, your time, and so forth. You can give me a like or a thumbs up or a dislike or a thumbs down on YouTube. You can also comment on both YouTube and Rumble. The subject of today's little piece has been unsubstantiated, and tomorrow we're going to talk about the idea of embracing change. It turns out it's actually a wider subject than that, but I still sort of like that title for it because I think it's an important thing to embrace change, and that's a big part of what we're going to talk about tomorrow. Hope you're having a good day today. I hope everything is going well for you. And I hope that we will see you again on tomorrow's edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This video was recorded on Wednesday, August 4th of 2021. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I hope you found it entertaining or instructional, or maybe both. If you want to see more from me, you can go to blogs.kpschubert.com. That's blogs.kpschubert.com. I am on Twitter, Parler, and Minds.com. My handle on each of those is @kpschubert. That's @kpschubert. I have a Rumble and a YouTube channel. They are the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble and YouTube. I have a Facebook page. The Facebook page is Kurt's Religion and Politics as well. I am on Patreon. If you want to support me, that's one of the better places you can do that. And you will find me at Kurt's Religion and Politics on Patreon. I have a podcast. The podcast is podcasts with an S, .kpschubert.com. That's podcasts.kpschubert.com. I think you should be able to find me with relative ease on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify as well. The best way I find to do that is to look for Kurt's Religion and Politics. You can try to use the Daily Summation. I find that it doesn't work as well as a general rule, but you can always try that. I'm glad to have you aboard today, and hopefully we will see you again tomorrow.